In this video, we're going to take a look at how we can create our own custom brushes to add certain little details like these little brush inserts that you see here. And we can put those all over the model. So you can see that this shape is a little bit different than this, and these shapes have been inserted in here. But you can start to combine different brushes together to get a more detailed kind of finalized look on your model. So let's start taking a look at how we can actually start creating some of these different brushes. As we get started, let's take a look at the most basic and simple way to create a custom brush. So I'm just going to go and put it on the standard brush. So again, you can tap B, and then tap S, and then find standard, and then go here for this. Alright, so we've already kind of looked at, with the standard brush and the Z add-on, we can just sculpt on the surface, and we can raise the surface up, hold down Alt, and we can dig in. But there are different stroke types that we can put together with different alpha shapes that will give us some cool effects as well. So if we put this on something like this shape here and we drag around, you can see that that brush changes depending on what the alpha shape is. So if I do something like the star, you can see that it kind of repeats that star shape. Now where I think this becomes a little bit more powerful is when you start to use the drag dot or the drag rectangle. So let's look at the drag dot real quick. So let's click on that, and depending on your brush size, how big your brush is, you can click and drag out a version of this, and it will kind of live on the surface and slide around the surface like this. See the little red line on there? That's telling me that I have lazy mouse turned on. If I'm doing this stuff, I don't necessarily want lazy mouse on, so I'll just tap L. You can see lazy mouse turned off there, and that actually lives in the stroke palette under lazy mouse. You can find it there if you want. So I can click and drag that thing around, and depending on my brush size, I'll tap S and make it smaller. I'll get a smaller brush like this. This comes in handy when you want details to show up on your model and you want them to be the same size. So I can just drag out a copy here, 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 and here, like this. So we're making sure that those brush strokes are all the same size. If we change this from this to maybe one of these alphas that we were looking at earlier, you can see the effect that we'll get for that, which is pretty cool. And if we want that to be a subtract, obviously we can hold down the Alt modifier and do a subtract, or we can just turn on Z sub so we don't have to hold that modifier in, and we can just plop these down everywhere on the model like that. And again, brush size is going to matter. The strength, the Z intensity. So if you tap U, you can get the slider for that. If you pump it up, it's obviously going to be a lot heavier for that stroke that you can lay down. But this is a nice way that you can get some predictable results for the strength and the size. The other thing that we can look at is changing from the stroke type from this drag dot. We'll do drag rectangle, and with this one, let's just choose this shape here for the alpha. This one will allow you to click and drag out, and if you drag left and right, you can actually rotate the stroke around. Now it won't allow you to move it on the surface like what we have with the drag dot, so depending on what the functionality that you're looking for, you're going to have to kind of play around with that. So I'm going to tap U and take down my intensity on here, and I'll drag this out like this, and I'll switch this to alpha 09. And what we can do is try to get our brush size nice and centered up with that stroke that we already have, and then click and drag out from the center there. And let's try to do that again, just try to be a little more precise. So a lot of this is a little bit of trial and error, trying to get the right placement for some of these things. So I'm going to drag one here like this, and then I'll drag out maybe to right there. So you're building something that kind of looks pretty cool and nice and detailed, and you can see we did that just by using two different alphas and changing some of the intensity on our brushes. I'm going to drag out one more stroke there. So yeah, you can get a lot of cool detail that way. I'm going to hit undo real quick to get back my model to the original state. So ZBrush comes and ships with these different alphas that you can try out for this, but what if you have a specific shape that you want to use? You can go ahead and go to Photoshop and you can create your own custom alpha. So let's take a look at that. So here I am inside of Photoshop, and I'm going to go ahead and make a new document. I'm just going to go to File, New, and I don't need anything super large pixel wise for this. I'm going to do 512 by 512, and I think that should give us fairly decent resolution for what we're going to be trying to create here inside of Photoshop. So it's going to just make this white document that we've got back here, and I'm going to paint with black. So I'm going to click on that color and drag down here in the corner, so I've got black here for this. The other thing I'm going to do is just show my rulers. So hit Control R, and that's going to bring up my rulers, and I'm going to drag a ruler right in the center this way and this way, and it should snap to the center of the document. That way I know for sure that I'm just building something that I can build out from the center of this document whenever I do selections. I'm going to put it on the selection type, this elliptical version here, and I'm going to click and drag out, and I'm going to hold Alt and Shift when I drag out, and that's going to drag out a marquee straight from the center here like that. Okay, I'm going to make a new layer right here, and I'm just going to fill it with black. So basically anything, let's say we've got a mid-gray color, and we'll fill it with that 50% right here, and I'll hit Alt backspace to fill with this color. You could think of anything that is mid-gray as just being flat in the world. Anything that's black is going to go dig down into the surface as far as it can possibly go, and anything that's white will be lifted up at that point. So we could take this selection. I'm going to hold down Control and click right here on that little icon, and that's going to make a selection for me here. And I'll make a new layer, and I could make this white below it. So I'm going to switch my colors here, so I get another color option. Click on that, just go to white, and then I'm going to go to Edit, Stroke, and let me pull this menu over, and I'm going to stroke it with 6 pixels. Let's do 12, just so we got something that's nice and large from the center. Let me turn this off. Let me just do that again. Edit, Stroke, and I accidentally did inside instead of center. So now that's going to build up a white rim alongside of here, like this. Let's go ahead and we'll try to push this on over to ZBrush. So ZBrush can take different file formats. If we save this out and say File Save As, and we just throw it on the desktop real quick. I know it can take Photoshop files, but we don't want these layers. So if you want to save it as a Photoshop file, you can just click off the layers tab right here. So I'll just call this disk 001 like that, hit save. So it's not too big of a deal. We're saving out a temporary file that we're going to load into ZBrush, and once it's in there, once you build these brushes, you can always get that out. So I'm not too worried about that file. Now we're over in ZBrush, and I'm going to go to the alpha palette, and I'm going to say import, and we can import in that alpha that we just made. And I just have to navigate and find it. I'm going to hit open for that you see here. So here's what we got. If we click and drag out with that drag rectangle, it's going to give us a stroke like you would expect, but it's kind of got this this border around it, right? So obviously that's not something that we want. So to fix that, let's just crank this up a little bit before we fix that, just so we can see some of these different varying levels that we've got going on here. And I'm going to put it on Z add like this. So you can see it's digging down into the surface. That white rim is pushing up, and then we've got our white, our gray palette that you see here that's kind of pushing the surface up a little bit like that. So let's go back on over to Photoshop and open that up so we can play around with the colors. We can go ahead and take this off here, and I'm basically going to take this white rim that we have, and let's change the levels of that, and let's drop that down a bit. Actually, I don't need this selection for it. I'll just preserve the transparency and hit Control L, which will bring up my levels adjustment like this, and I can click and drag this down and that will get it a little bit darker like this for us. Okay, so let's save over the top of this. We'll hit Control Shift S to save, and then I'm gonna just save right over the top of this thing like this, and hit OK, and then we'll hop on over to ZBrush. Okay, here we are in ZBrush. So I'm going to go back to the alpha palette, and I'm going to say import, and we'll go to disk 1, open that up, and we should have this newer version of this that you see here. And I'm going to click and drag out like this. Okay, so the background that we have is white, and you can see it's pushing that thing up. The black part that we have in here is pushing down. You can go on the alpha palette, and we could dock that over to the right over here. And there's a modify, so there's different things that we can do with this. We'll take a look at that, but there's an inverse button on here that we can use. And now if we click and drag out, you can see what it's doing. It's pushing this thing out like this, and then giving us that rim as well. But we want the inverse of that, so if we do Z sub, we can click and drag out, and you can see kind of what it's giving us now. This resolution that you see going on here, that's actually dependent on how many polys you have in the model itself. So there's not tons of polys on the model. I mean, it looks like there is, but there's just not enough to have a really super crisp edge for this. So one thing you can do is go to modify, and there's a blur, and it'll actually take this alpha and it'll blur it just slightly. So we could put this at like 4, so it's going to blur it like 4 pixels, and we can do that. You can see we're losing our little rim though when we do this out. So it does look a little bit better for the crispness for this, but we're losing that lip. So if we hop on back on over to Photoshop, and we take this part of the circle and make it a little bit smaller, so I'm just going to select it, hit Control T to do a transform on it. I'm going to hold down Alt and Shift and drag in like this to make that a little bit smaller. I'm going to make it about yay big. And so then I also need this this gray portion here to be filled in. So I'm going to put on just a brush, and I'm going to select this color holding down Alt, and I need to take off preserve transparency, otherwise I can't draw on that. So I'm just going to paint this in real quick like this. And then now I'm going to save this thing out, Control Shift S, and we've got this disk 1, save over the top of it, hit OK. Hop back on over to ZBrush. I'll do an import like this, and we should have this to drag back out again. But I'm going to click the inverse again. So we've got this going on. You can see the lip is a lot bigger this time. And I can put on that blur. Let's do like 4 pixels again. And maybe just a little bit more. Let's do like 6 pixels. You can see that's starting to look a lot better. So I know that took a little while, and I just wanted to show you this kind of process, kind of what the colors are going to equal out to, and to show you how you can kind of fix some of these issues that might arise. So you can see with the Z sub on there, it's going to dig in. If I hold down Alt, I can make a positive copy of that and add those two together to get a new look like this. So that gives you quite a bit of nice detail that you see going on here from just adding one alpha like this. So once we get that brush made and we are happy with it, the other thing we can do is actually make a custom icon for this, and we can save it out. We could just take the brush and we could save it right now currently the way it is, but it would be nice to have a little icon for this thing. So I'm going to show you, if you don't have one of these pieces of geo in your scene for the polysphere, it's pretty easy to add this. We can just hit the comma key, and you can go to the tools section, and then you go to double click this polysphere like this, and it's going to add it to the scene. I like to have one of those in the scene anyways, just in case I want to append it to any of my subtools and start sculpting on it. It's just a nice piece of geometry to start off with and start sculpting. So you just double click on it and it'll add that polysphere to the scene over here like that. The other thing is these icons are built using toy plastic material. So just click on that real quick, switch on over and make your color all the way white like this. And for the icons, if we want to have a little more resolution on this model, we can hit Control D to add some subdivision levels. I'll hit it twice, and if I drag out, you can see what I've got going on here. So for the icon representation, we might want to make this more intense, like 100%, just to make it really obvious for that icon, because it's going to get scaled down. And then once we make the icon, I'll just put that back to whatever that value was. So I'll just put it right around 50 like this. And so let's say this is going to be a nice representation for my icon. We can go to brush and you can say select icon. If you just hold on Alt and click select icon, it'll build that icon for you for the brush. Now if we save this out, it's going to have this icon, the stroke type, and the alpha along with any of these settings that we set in the alpha palette. It'll save that out for us. The other thing you can do is go to brush, and there's edit brush credit, so you can give it a name for who you are, like this, and you can also put a link to like your website or something like that, which is pretty cool. So I hit OK for that, and then now I'll just go ahead and say brush, and I'll save as, and I'll save that to a location that I like to put, which is the Pixologic folder. And then I just got a ZBrush Tools folder, and I've got everything categorized for where I want to save stuff. So I've got brushes, and these are different brushes that people have made, and I've got a folder for just the things that I've made. And so I've got a few of these that I've made, so I'll just save this as like the third version of one of these kind of tech circles or something like that. And so now whenever I go and find those different brushes that I've made, if I go to the brush palette, I've got a link to that spot we were just taking a look at. We'll go here and navigate to that. You can see here's the new brush that we just built right here. So I could load any of these brushes that I've made through that similar process like you see. So these are some different brushes that were made, and if I want to load up that brush that we just made, I'll just double click on that one again, and you can see we've got this version of that brush ready to go and ready to use on our model like that. And if we want to change the stroke type, that's possible for us to do as well. Okay, so I'm going to hit undo to get that back. I like to keep that piece of geometry, just keep hitting undo until you get it back to here. That way if I want to keep creating different brushes, everything's ready for me to go at that point, and it's going to be pretty easy for me to make those. So let's take a look on this model. If we made these a lot smaller and have this drag dot, maybe what some of this stuff would start to look like on here for this. So that'd be a pretty good brush for doing some of these inserts like this. Okay, so that's going to be like the most simplest way to build brushes inside of ZBrush using stroke type, alphas, creating your own custom icons. The next thing I'm going to show you is how you can actually sculpt something with geometry, and then you can capture the depth information for that. So instead of building this alpha that's just you know, different varying levels of pushing up and down, we could have actual shape to something that we actually modeled that thing out, and then we can get that put in there. So shapes more like this that are kind of complex, where they kind of dip in at a slope and then come up and then come down. Let's take a look at how we could build something like that. For this example, I'm going to be over inside of Maya. So I've got everything set up, ready to go. Got my grid visible and ready to start kind of building on. So I'm just going to go to create polygon primitives, and I have this interactive creation turned off. Not a fan of that. I'm going to go to cylinder and go to the option box for that. and then take a look. I'm just going to leave everything where it is right now, and I'll do an axis of up on Y. I'll hit apply and just see what it's giving me for this cylinder, because we're going to change options on this. I'll tap 5 to view shaded mode, and then so I can change this, the radius of this. I'll just make this like 10, and then the height, let's just make this 2, something like that. Subdivision through the height, we'll just do 1, so it's got one thing going on here. And for the caps, I'll just make this 0, so we've got something like this. So if we go ahead and input 8 for the subdivision on the axis, you can see we've got something like this. This is what we want. We want something that could easily be turned into quads. And so I know a number of 8 will work well. If I tap 3, you can see how that kind of smooths out into a circular shape. That's what we're looking for. And if we do a multiplication of 2 on this, then we're going to get 16 pieces going around, so we can easily turn that into a quad as well. So that would be done if we just are in the object mode like this, right click, say object mode, hold down shift, right click, split, and then split polygon tool. You can see if we put a split right down the middle of this, and we put a split down here like this, we could easily start taking these pieces and turning them into quads at that point. I'm going to finish this out like that, and if we tap 3, then you can see how we're starting to affect this like this in this manner. So I'm going to select all the faces on the bottom, get rid of those. I don't need those. I'm actually going to take all the points on the bottom and just scale them out like this. If I hold down W and click W actually to put it in the move, and hold down X, I can snap to the grid like this. And basically what I want to end up building is this shape that I like in the center, and then I just need a lot of geo around it later on. You'll see why we want to do that. We're going to look down on what is considered a ZBrush's canvas, and we want to fill it all with geo except for this cool shape that we have in the center, and then we'll grab the depth information from that at that point. So I could take this point here and start snapping it to like the grid. That is possible to do at this point, like this. I could take these and hold down X and then move it along this axis and snap here like that. And snap here. Okay, so now I've got a shape for myself that is starting to be like a nice square. Because that's the kind of document that we're going to build in ZBrush, something that's nice and square. So I could take these faces here and I could do an extrude face. So I'm just going to hold down shift and right click when I'm in face mode, and I can do an offset on this to bring it down, at least this offset here, and then pull this down a little bit like this. If I hit G, that'll do my last command. I'll do another offset, pull that down just a little bit like that. Hit G again, offset some more, and then push this pretty far down inside of here. Hit G again, offset that a little bit. And this is just where you get to kind of play around with your artistic abilities to kind of build something that you think looks cool. You can just use this offset. Hit G again. I'll set that like that. I'm going to pull it up. Hit G again. Maybe pull that up just a little bit. Hit G one more time. Pull that in really close. So tap F8 and I'm going to delete history. Alt-Shift-D will delete history on this. So if I tap 3, I can see what this is going to look like if it's smoothed out. So I want this definitely to be more hard-edged. I also want to hold the shape a little bit better, so I'm going to tap F10 for my edges. So F9 is verts, F10 is edges, F11 is faces. So I'm going to go F10 for an edge, and I can hold down Control and right click and say to edge ring utilities, to edge ring and split. And I'll add another division for me within here. And once I do that once, I can select any other edge and just tap G to add more geometry in certain areas. So I can add another edge here, another split here, here like that. And now you can see when I tap 3, it's starting to hold that shape a lot better. But I want some nice crisp edges. So I'll tap 1 here for that. And really what I need is, I don't even need this. So let's say we want to take away some edges. We can select one of the edges and hold down Control, right click. Instead of saying edge ring utilities, we'll say edge loop utilities, to edge loop and delete. And we can get rid of an edge that we have there. So I might have added one too many there. I'll tap G for that one. What I can do is double click on an edge and it'll get this ring like this here, and this one here. I'm just holding down Shift when I do this to add to that selection, and maybe add this and this. And then now I can hold down Shift and right click and say bevel edge. And I'm just gonna see what the defaults give me that for that. Hit undo, Shift, right click, bevel edge, and I can go to the option box. And with this one I can tell it segments. I only did 1, so you can see it added geo real close to each other. Maybe do 2, and we could do the width like 0.25 or something. So you can see it's bunching up that geo for us in that area. If I do double click on this edge again and tap G, I should be able to get that last tool. So if I tap 3, you can see what I'm getting here. So I do want something that looks like this, where it's nice and crisp and hard-edged. And I'm not too worried about adding too much geo or anything else like that, because really what I want to do is just make a nice detailed mask from this. So no big deal for geometry. So I'm going to get rid of this edge here like this. I'm going to double click this one, and I'm going to bevel that edge again. Do the same thing for this. Tap 3 and see what we're getting here on this. So we're getting a pretty cool shape. I don't like this edge here. I want that to be harder. So we'll tap 3 like this. Okay, so we got a pretty cool piece of geo. I'm going to delete history, Alt-Shift-D. That's going to delete the history. And if I have it in this number 3, that's going to be the smooth mesh preview. And if I want to convert that to actual geometry, that's going to be pretty easy for me to do. I can go to Modify, Convert, Smooth Mesh Preview to Polygons. And you can see it's going to put this poly smooth over here, and we can actually dial down the divisions in it. We could take it to 0, and it's going to be the exact model that we had without the smoothing. Or we can do put 1 here, hit enter. You can see the geo level that we're getting for that. Well, it looks pretty good, but 2 is probably where we need to be for stuff. And I guess the last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to select this outer ring. So let's double click that and scale this up nice and large, just so it'll be real easy to fill the canvas. And I'm sure you'll see exactly what I'm talking about real soon here. So I'm going to export this out, and again, just like the Photoshop thing, I'm not too worried about this model. We're just going to temporarily use it. So I'm just going to say File, Export Selection, and then make sure I'm exporting out as an OBJ. And if you don't have that, you're going to have to go to your preferences and load that. So I'm going to say Export Selection with everything on except for materials. I'm just going to throw it on the desktop, real quick and let that load up like this. Export selection, and let's hop on over to ZBrush. Okay, so I want to get that model in. So I want to click off this current model that I'm on. If I can just click on this simple brush, that will take me off this model that I'm currently on. Otherwise, if we import something in, it's going to think you want to import it over the top of the current model you have selected. And that can be cool for updating UVs, things like that, but that's not what we want to do right now. We want to get a new model in. So I'm going to click simple brush, and it'll ask me if I want to get, go off the current tool. So I'm just going to say switch like that. At that point, it takes your 3D model and it drops it to their 2D canvas thing. So you see my cursor turned white. So that might be a little confusing, but we can clear the canvas out by hitting Control N. That'll clear the canvas out. And now we're ready to import in our model. So we'll just go to the tool section and say import. I'm going to go to the desktop and then navigate and then find my model, which is this one here. Go ahead and open that up, and I'm going to click and drag, and that'll draw it on the canvas. My cursor's still white, and I'm going to put it in this edit mode, which takes it from a 2D mode like this to actually editing it, and now it's in 3D. But we got that garbage on the canvas. We can just hit Control N, and that will get rid of that at that point. So here's our model, and you can see at this in ZBrush, it's not going to smooth the edges for us. So even though it looked nice and high res inside of Maya, it's still got some geometry going on here like that. So I don't like that. I want to go back on over to Maya, and I'm going to put one more mesh smooth on it. So I'll just tap 3. Actually, I still have the mesh smooth on there from last time. So I can just take this division and make it 3. Whoa, and it didn't like that. And the reason it didn't like that was because I moved some geo and then we did that smooth. So I will delete the history on it. No big deal. I'll put the mesh smooth on it, so tap 3, and then I'll go to modify, convert smooth mesh previews to polygons, like that. Okay, so that should definitely have enough geo for us. It's a lot of geometry, but no big deal. I'll save that out again, so file export selection, export that out, go to the desktop, and I just saved it as this. I'm going to save over the top of it. And then now this time, since we've already got this model loaded and we want to update it, we can just say import with the model selected, and it will basically replace that model with this new version. So you can see it's nice and clean for us now. And the other thing we're going to do is temporarily change our canvas, the dimensions on it, to make a map. So we're going to go to document, turn off this proportion button right here, and just change this to 512 by 512. And I'm going to hit resize, and it's going to ask me if I want to do this. I'll say yes, and I'm going to clear out that canvas. Hit Control N. Get used to clearing out the canvas a lot for these different operations. You should just know whenever your cursor is white that you're in that 2D mode. So here we are with that model. I'm going to click and drag it out again. Tap T to go into edit mode, like what we did before. Just going to click and drag down here like this and try to get this angle. And when I start rotating it really close to being flat, I can hold down Shift and it'll constrain that rotation to the top view. Now I can tap F and it'll frame it like this. And then now I can just zoom in. So you could hold down Control and right click. That's one way of zooming. I like to just hold down Alt and click and drag. So you just hold down Alt, click, and then let go of Alt and drag. That might be confusing for people at the very beginning, so you could just use this scale icon that they have right here like this. But the thing I want to do is make sure everything's nice and framed up. Make sure your perspective is not on. You want just a straight top-down view of this thing. And then the next thing I'm going to do, once this is positioned, we can go to the alpha palette and we can click this and then say grab dock. So it's going to grab the depth information, which you can see here, which is pretty cool. And you can see if we draw out on this, which let's actually switch over to the polysphere. That model that I have is not the greatest for that. So there's the drag dot, and if we do the drag rectangle and drag out, it's going the opposite direction because we're on Z sub. So I'll put on Z add like this. And so you can see how far that's being pushed out. So it's being pushed out pretty far. We'll put that on like 40, and then we can kind of drag out like this just to test it out. The other thing it's doing is, you can see because of this square that we kind of grabbed out, we might want to change the depth information for this. So we can go to brush, dock this over to the right, and over here under depth, you can see how far this brush stroke is that it's going to embed. So if we drag it up like this, you can see it's going to push it up a little bit further. If we drag it all the way up, we've got this going on. If we drag it down, you can see what's going on here. And it just tries to push that brush stroke down a little bit further. So I don't think that's really helping us out either. So I'm just going to put the embed at 0 like this. Sometimes that can help. The other thing we can do is go to the alpha palette and dock this over here. And then we can turn on something that's called radial fade like this. And if we push up the radial fade, it's going to fade out the edges of the document. So if we put in this really little, you can kind of see how it's fading out that white portion like this. So if I click and drag out, see how it's becoming a bit more smooth. There's still kind of a little bit of a ripple in the surface there. So you got to kind of experiment with this and find the right amount of how much you want this thing to kind of stick out, and how much you want the edges to kind of disappear and go away. So there's that. And I think the intensity for me is a bit high. The other thing that we could try is let's take off this radial fade just to see what we got going on here. So we'll be back to the point where we've got this nice nasty looking square thing. We could also set the mid value to something like 50 on the map here. And that's getting, looks like that problem's getting a little better from kind of going away. Now if we push it to 100, we've kind of got the opposite problem. So maybe there's a sweet spot within here, which looks like that's pretty close. So maybe I'll do 75. And that was too much, so we're going back towards 80. And it's looking pretty good. Like this. So using that can help us out quite a bit. Now we can pump up the intensity, tap U, push that up like that, maybe a bit more. So that's looking pretty good. And if you're really concerned about stuff, you could use just a little bit of this radial fade at that point and drag out, and then I think you'd be pretty confident that you're not going to get any kind of edge to show up along here like that. Okay, so the other thing is, while we've got this sphere on here, you might as well put it on the toy plastic and put on perspective this time, and then click and drag out like this to build our icon. And we can say brush, hold down Alt, select icon. So we've built our custom icon for this, and we could change the brush credits, and mine was left over because we made that last brush, so everything's good for that. Now we can just save this thing out and save it into the spot. It's up to you where you want to put it, but like you said, I've got kind of a little bit of a system for how I like to save these things out. and I'll just save this as number 4. Save, and then I'll check it and see that it's in here. So here's the new thing that we just made. Now let's get our document back to where the size was before. I think I was using something like 1920 by 1080, and I'll hit resize, and I'll hit Control N. Remember, you're going to get used to doing this Control N business quite a bit. I'm going to close up these and go back to the model, draw it on the screen, hit T, and then tap F to frame it, and turn on perspective. And I've got that toy plastic on, don't want that. I'll put it on this custom material that I created for myself. And then now let's take a look at what this looks like on the surface of the model. So we can click and drag that out, which is nice and cool. It's got a nice shape to it, and we can reuse that thing over and over. Again, if we want to make sure that we're using the same size on this, we can use the drag dot, so I can make multiple versions of this. And you can see it does interact with the surface a little bit. So if I see some weirdness in the surface, I might rotate my camera to get more of a straight on view, and then click and then add that. And let's see if we can get something that's right in the center for this. We can, but that angle is a little bit odd. Let's try that again. So it's going to do maybe a little bit of odd behavior if you see in the middle, because this is bending in like this. It does try to look at something about the actual surface of the model. And then also, what if we want to dig in? So if we do Z sub, make this thing smaller, we could click and push in. This would be kind of cool for you know, like if there's some kind of tubes or something like that that are growing out of that area. That would probably work out pretty nice for that. And yeah, so that's kind of a cool look. So again, using these types of brushes is going to be highly dependent on the geometry that you're working with and what the resolution is for that. So if you're using Dynamesh, you definitely want to save this for the later stages and then pump up that resolution on Dynamesh. If you're using subdivision levels, again, you still want to save this for like the last portions of things, and then you know, really start to add enough geometry in your model to support the things that you're trying to build at that point. And you should be able to get some really cool looks out of this and be able to detail your model out with this method. And the next video, we're going to be taking a look at how to make insert mesh brushes, which actually uses real geometry instead of depending on the geometry that you're adding this thing to. So with this method in conjunction with the mesh insert brushes, you can get a really highly detailed model that looks like you've spent a lot of time really kind of obsessing over some of these details. Whenever it takes a little time to create these brushes, but once they're made, they can really add a lot of really cool finesse to your model.